Welcome to Fueling Your Legacy, hosted by Samuel Knickerbocker. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a new, stronger foundation essential in creating your legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. Welcome back to Fueling Your Legacy, and we today have an author and a writer on. Excited to share her new book with us, but she's a grandmapreneur. Struggle with that one. She's been an entrepreneur for over 30 years, and she's just driven by a need to help people overcome and become better for themselves. And she's been blessed with this ability of being an author, and she's found that as her new purpose moving forward. And she's actually going to be talking about her new book that she's just released recently. So her name is Shae Burton, and we are super excited to have her on here, this being Christmas week. We just had Christmas. We're going into the new year. And so it's a good time to start thinking about, hey, what is your legacy? And maybe what are your things that you've done for Christmas with your family so far? And what would you want to implement next year? What didn't go good this Christmas that could go better next Christmas? So with that, Shae, welcome. And just if you could introduce yourself as well, that'd be awesome.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate that, Sam. Like you said, I'm Shae Burton, and actually born and raised in Utah. And must admit that from the time I was probably in the single digits as an age, I loved writing. I started out with poetry and spent the majority of my life in one form or another writing. So wrote poetry, wrote trainings, wrote books, wrote short stories, loved those types of things in school. And I used to joke when I had my first daughter that I had to decide if I was going to put her in the filing cabinet or my writing, because I couldn't do both. And so I made the wise choice, and I put the writing in the filing cabinet until I got to a better space in my life where I had more time that I could focus on that, because obviously that time with my children when they were younger was very important. So yeah,
that's awesome. I have never been a great writer. I've never put a lot of effort into writing, I should say that, because I don't even know if I could be good or not, because I've never put a lot of effort into it.
Right.
But it's something that I desire, and one of my goals this year is to publish my first book. Right now it's an ebook, and it's about 25 pages long, but I want to develop it into a more at least 100 to 150 page book that is going to be out there helping people with legacy. So that's awesome. I'm curious, obviously you had one kid, sounds like at least one daughter. What would you say your greatest success is over your lifetime so far?
I honestly would have to say that our children are probably my greatest success. Being a writer and an author, especially published, is wonderful. And it takes a lot of work, but to actually see the progression of your children as they grow and then become adults themselves and bring you the gift of grandchildren, and then you get to watch literally some of the things that you would consider traditions or legacies that they pass on in their own families it's great. They of course come up with their own and have their own way of doing things, but it's just really neat to be able to see how they have grown in their lives and how they now raise our grandchildren. So that would probably for sure be my most crowning achievement.
That's awesome. So I'm curious, you're ahead on this path than me, right? Your kids are grown and now you're having grandkids. That's where my parents are. I'm the kid who is now bringing grandchildren into the world for my parents. But were you thinking about like what your legacy would be, what you'd be passing on to your children in the first few years of your kids being young, or did that something that just developed and now you can look back and say, hey, this is what I passed down to my child? Like, how intentional were you about passing legacy onto your children?
That's an interesting question. And I think for me, I would have to look at the other side of that coin, because in the world that I grew up in, there were a lot of challenges. And so I think when I started out as a parent, it wasn't so much of what is the legacy I'm going to leave as what is the legacy I'm not going to leave.
Okay.
So I think I started out with the other side of that coin. And then over time, we developed what we felt like was more of a legacy that we wanted to pass on. And for us, it was probably pretty basic. We just were very adamant that our children know how much we loved them and how proud of them that we are, and just encourage them to live a really great life. And, the challenges that I personally came from, I think I started out a lot of my space running from things instead of running towards things. And there's a big difference there, huge difference there. Usually when we're running from something, it's a fear-based motivation or decision. And eventually in my life, I flipped that coin over and did as you suggested, and was running towards something and wanting to create a life and a legacy that we could be proud of passing on, but also that our children could hopefully be proud of receiving.
That's awesome. And do you feel like at this point, because at this point it sounds like you're at a position where your kids are then passing on legacy to their children, and are they passing on what you thought they would be passing on, or are they choosing different lessons from their childhood that they're choosing to pass on, and things they're not choosing to pass on?
Yes and yes. So there are definitely things that I can see that they do pass on. They're wonderful parents. They are wonderful parents. And that really does our hearts just so good to be able to see what they have become. But I think that there are things, especially as they get married and new backgrounds are passed from their spouses are brought into their life and in their world. They also have ideas and ways in which they want to do things that they're going to pass on to their children. And the combinations are pretty awesome to see. One of the things that we really truly did love was Christmas. And when you talk about legacies, I also kind of combine that a little bit with traditions, because I see that traditions are often part of the legacies that we pass on. And we had a lot of super, super fun Christmas traditions because I absolutely just over the board loved Christmas. And so we had a lot of really super fun Christmas traditions, and it has really been fun to see some of the same ones we've retained, very, very few of them now because they're doing their own things, but they have created and come up with all of some of their own traditions that they're passing on. And I feel like very strongly that the traditions that we have often become a big part of those legacies that we leave for our kids. Those are the memories, those are the things that they recall, those good, happy, fun, positive times that they draw from as they get older and they start having their own kids, and they think back, what did we do that was fun? What did I really enjoy in my life? So I think those traditions are a huge part of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm sitting here thinking there's some things that have, I guess, remained consistent, but there's also things that have changed over the years. And I think the tradition or the legacy is, when I look back, okay, what am I going to do with my kids? It's what was the feeling that that my parents were trying to give me? What was the experience they were trying to give me? Because now we just live, honestly, we live in a different world. Like I grew up and we got like 2 or 3 things consistently. We always had oranges on Christmas morning. We had animal crackers. That was like a thing that we always got, was animal crackers.
I've never heard that one.
We almost always got something from my grandma, like a sewed like little tree ornament or something, and then pajamas. Like those were things that like we always got every year. I'm not a pajama person. I don't wear pajamas almost ever. So it's not something that like that I would be passing on. That's not something I would want to be passing on, but I like the idea of clothes. So things like that, that maybe I'll just pass down in a different form. And now our family traditions that we do now with our same family are more like, it transferred from oranges, but now it's like breakfast casserole. I don't remember having breakfast casserole as a little kid, and could have been just like financial means or whatever it is. I don't remember having it, but now like I look forward to having breakfast casserole on Christmas morning. I don't really make it any other time other than Christmas, not because I can't, but I just don't think to. So that's something. And then now we play like a Christmas unwrapping game with lots of boxes. So different things have come up, but I think the feeling is like exactly what you said. What was this fun experience, this memorable thing that our kids can then look back on and say, hey, those were good times. How can we then share those good times, those good family environment times with others?
Well, and I agree. One of the key traditions that I remember as a child was that my grandfather and grandmother always made some sort of handcrafted gift that they gave us. And I know my mother has done that. I now do that. And I see that there are aspects of our kids who, although they may not incorporate handcrafted gifts, they try to do gifts that are meaningful in some way, at least one gift that has a special meaning to it. And so when you talk about that, we had special stocking gifts that we had specific wrapping papers, and we always do crepes for breakfast. And even to this day, we get together, and when we get together on Christmas morning, we do the crepes.
That's good.
But there's a lot to be said for those traditions. And like you said, it's more about what are the memories, what are the feelings that those bring to us. And I think those are the things, hopefully, those are the things that we pass on to our children.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious, what would you say your most memorable Christmas has been? I mean, over all your life, has it been when you were younger, more when you had kids and you were able to produce, we'll say, put on a Christmas for your children, or is it more now seeing your children put on things for their great-grandchildren? Or for your grandchildren? What's been the most memorable Christmas?
You know, I don't think I could point out one. We had some really great Christmases with our kids. I mean, it was so fun with the traditions that we had that if my kids weren't up by 7 o'clock, I was waking them up. It's like, come on, Santa has come. Where are you? Because I was so excited about Christmas. If they weren't up, I got them up. But, now it's kind of, it's taken on a different dynamic because my husband and I are basically empty nesters. And so we have traditions that he and I have incorporated in our life now that our kids are not around as much, in the home. And yet we still have that. We still get together on Christmas morning with our kids and grandkids, as many of them as we can. And we call ourselves Grandma and Grandpa Claus. So I'm Grandma Claus, he's Grandpa Claus, and we come with our bag of goodies, and we have this special time that we spend with our kids and grandkids on Christmas morning, and that's become a very special thing for us. But my husband and I, we do something between he and I on Christmas Eve, and that's become kind of our tradition since we've become empty nesters. So there's value in the old, and there's value in being flexible enough to work with the new as it comes, because things change. But the value of that concept of traditions is still there.
Right. No, that's really cool. Yeah, it's a thing that I think about a lot. What my favorite Christmases were, and what we did as little kids. And I don't know how much of us, like when I was younger, we went to, I don't know exactly what it was, some like homeless shelter or something where we brought food and we fed people. And I don't know if we were there serving because it was the only way we would get food, because we were not very wealthy as a young family, or if we were there just to serve. But that's some of my favorite memories, is going to serve. And like, how can I give that to my kids? That's something that I want to give is the idea that Christmas is about service and Christmas is about sharing love to others and less focused on receiving and much more focused on giving. That's something that is my favorite memories of Christmas. And so I think about how can I engender that? And maybe it looks different now than it did then. But then how do I get that meaning and that tradition of service across to other people? So it's something I think about a lot.
Well, and I think what's great about today's world is that the opportunities to do things like that are everywhere. Some of them are in this country, some of them are in another country, some of them are with animals, some of them are with our neighbors. 12 days of Christmas type things, or homeless shelters, or donating to these humanitarian societies who go and work with people in other countries who are struggling. I mean, just the opportunities to serve are so varied now that it's almost just fun trying to decide what thing you're going to do this year or in each consecutive year to be a part of them. It's fun to see how many different opportunities there are out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And and some of them, I think some of them they take some planning, they take some more concerted effort than just like waking up in December and thinking, oh, let's do this. Some things for our listeners, some things that you want to do next year, you may actually need to start planning now. You may need to start thinking, okay, well, maybe it's a financial thing that you guys want to save a certain amount so you can go give somebody Christmas. Maybe it's just, I don't know. I have no idea. I'm still brainstorming myself. Maybe it's a gift from every month, or like a picture from every month that was really meaningful to you about each of your children, or something. Like, maybe, I have no idea, but just something. If we're thinking about it now, we're able to have that spirit of Christ, that spirit of love, that spirit of giving throughout the year, rather than just around a few days of the month. And I think it would be, if you start planning now, way less stressful by the time we get to. I went to Costco yesterday, and that place was warming. I'm like, oh my gosh. I was in this boat 2 days ago because I was shopping for stuff 2 days ago, but I got all my stuff done. So now it's like, oh man, all these people are more procrastinators than me.
I have to admit, traditionally, in order for me to enjoy Christmas, I can't be out in those crowds because it kind of just takes and distracts from that spirit for me. And so traditionally, I try to have the majority of my Christmas done and bought and everything by Thanksgiving.
Wow.
So we're pretty good at that. And because I do handcrafted gifts, as you mentioned, I have to start quite a bit sooner in the year than December, or I'd never get anything done. So
yeah, for sure. I haven't decided I'm going full handcrafted yet. I've done little odd projects and things for my wife, because I'm not a big gift giver. The truth is, I'm not a big gift giver, and I don't generally like receiving gifts. It's not my love language on any level. And so so for me, that's hard, because I have to put a lot of effort into, like, okay, is this thing going to be practical? I try and go through all my lists, like, why am I giving this stuff? So I do tend to make like furniture or things that are going to be used throughout the year. And I feel have a purpose. But sometimes you just need to learn to give just to give because somebody else wants it, not because it means anything to you. So. And
you do have to learn to receive, Sam. You just do.
I know. I'm getting a lot better at it. Thank goodness for my wife, who's like 100% a gift giver. She loves surprises. She loves being like the opposite of me in this realm is her. And so she's helping me along the way to like be willing to receive. But that's an interesting topic, really. The willingness to receive applies so much, not just in Christmas and gift giving, but the willingness to receive across life. And receive the positives from the negatives. Earlier, when you were talking about legacy and how a lot of things you just came with the other side of the coin. You knew a lot of things you just didn't want to pass on. And for me, there was a lot of like the surface level stuff that I didn't want to pass on from my childhood, just because it was maybe not the best childhood that I had from a surface level perspective, right? But
Sure.
that was because I was going through it, and that was my perspective, was just the surface things. I was a little kid. But now when I look back on my childhood, I wouldn't give up any of my childhood because of the lessons and what I think the meaning behind it, right? So I'm able to go back and be like, okay, yes, maybe the way this showed up wasn't the best, and I didn't like the way it showed up, but I do want to pass on that meaning. I want to pass on the feeling of love, even though it didn't show up the way I felt like I received love. The fact is, my parents, they wanted to show me they loved me. They wanted to sacrifice and wanted to do those things for me, even though it didn't show up the way I wanted to receive it. And so going back and looking at from a new perspective, that's even like a deeper legacy, I guess, of the things that I do want to pass on. I'm able to go back and say, okay, the actual what showed up, not happy with, but the meaning behind everything, I think that's what is a legacy from my mom and dad, of really a legacy of love and meaning and care and sacrifice. That's what my childhood was for me. Even on the surface, it was not like that. It was not a great childhood surface level, but deeper, I think that's what my parents really their goal was for us as children.
And the truth is, I would say the majority of the time, parents are doing the best they can. Sometimes, honestly, we just don't know what we don't know. And as children receiving and needing to receive certain things, as well as parents who want to give and don't always know how to give because of what their childhood was like, or maybe because of experiences that stunted that growth process in one direction or another. And the truth is often, because we don't know what we don't know, we make assumptions based on what we see or what we experience. But we don't always have, as you mentioned, we don't have the underlying story about why is somebody the way they are, which is a lot what Christmas Legacy is about, is trying to figure out, and realize there are things that happen in our life that we don't always understand, and we make assumptions or we draw conclusions that may be erroneous based on our own experiences or our own understanding of what's going on around us.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I think I do want to just dive into your book, because I want to know, I want you to share it with other people, because just I've heard the storyline about it, and I think other people, it plays really well into this. But first, why did you choose the title Christmas Legacy? Like, why the word legacy? Because I know for myself, when I was trying to really understand my purpose in my career field and what I want to do to help people, and I went through a lot of different words. I rewrote my purpose and my mission and tried to describe it in like a sentence or less, over 25 different times. And ultimately I came out with the word legacy because of the meaning behind it, and what's being passed on, the multi-generational aspect of it, but also the independence, the ability to have a foundation that's going to last. So the word legacy is something that ultimately I chose that best described my mission and my purpose to help families with, is how can they create a legacy, a meaningful legacy that they're going to pass on. So I'm curious why you chose legacy specifically, but Christmas Legacy.
Well, Christmas Legacy, the reason it came to me, Christmas part did, is because the book is based, really it's written at Christmas time. And the legacy part, though, is multifaceted, I think, in the book. And the idea behind it really is about, it does come down to what is the legacy that we want to leave. But it's also, maybe, as we've discussed here, trying to understand the legacy that was meant to be left. And so Christmas Legacy, although my understanding is it's a little similar to other things that may have been written or produced out there, but there is I think a slight difference to that. This is a story about a young man named David who has been estranged from his father for about 8 years. And he is suddenly notified that his father has passed away. And David is filled with all of these emotions that he has been carrying around with him about his father and about the circumstances with his father. And now he's in a position where he can't even address his father in regards to these anymore. In the meantime, David finds out that he has been given some unique requests in his father's will. And while the requests have some significance to the story and to David, I think the greater significance of this whole book and the whole concept of the book is that David really is forced to face the man that he has become because of these experiences that he's gone through, specifically with his father, but in general, and dealing with those from the past, dealing with them in the present, and trying to come to terms with how that future is going to look for him. And the unique part about this is that part of this legacy, if you will, is how his father is requesting what he's requesting in order to continue his quote-unquote presence in the lives of his children and grandchildren, whom he will not be alive actually to participate in, if that makes sense. So the story really is one about a man trying to come to terms with his own feelings and emotions, and also coming to understand a father he realizes he never really knew.
That's awesome. I think about how often in my own life have I made, based on experiences or situations or just hearsay, have I made judgments or assumptions about others or other situations, and then I've chosen an identity or I've chosen to live my life in a certain way because of what I thought about X, Y, or Z situation, person, faith, whatever it is. And then when you have to come to terms with, oh, that's not actually how it was, it's like, oh, that's an interesting thing. So for instance, I'll give an example. I've thought for the last, since I can remember, that my mom, and there's 10 children, and then there's a 4-year gap, and then there's my youngest brother. And I thought for the longest time that it was a mistake, that she was not planning on having this kid, and that's why she was so distraught that she was pregnant again, right? And that's what I've been telling people. Like, I feel like I've been lying to you my whole life, but that's what I've been telling people, because that's what I thought. That was the narrative that maybe I just heard it somewhere, or I assumed it, or whatever the case is. That was the narrative that I thought. Well, then a few months ago, my mom and dad were visiting, and we were talking about it, and they're like, no, like, we planned to have this kid. We were not mentally healthy raising all the other ones. We got in a safe place. We thought we were good. And we didn't recognize that the crazy was connected to the having 11 children or 10 children at that point. And so they decided to have another kid. And then she had some mental health issues again. And so then she realized, oh, it's the pregnancy that's making me crazy, you know? And so I took maybe the distraughtness of her coming to terms with this childbearing thing isn't necessarily, I'm not cut out for it, right? That's how she was seeing it. But I took it, oh, she was upset that she accidentally got pregnant again. You know, because she had my youngest brother when she was 42, if I'm not mistaken. It was definitely over 40. So it's like, she was old to have another child in today's standards, but she was still trying because she wanted to, where I always thought she didn't want to. So it's like, throws my whole narrative out of whack. I'm like, oh, okay, well, this changes my story, right? But this happens so often in our lives where we make assumptions about what the other person wants, needs, thinks, whatever the case may be. And then when we have to come to terms with the fact that that's not what is the truth, that can be difficult for the individual, but it's also difficult for the person who's being misunderstood, maybe not knowing how to, either not knowing how to communicate clearly, initially, or just honestly being too scared to communicate clearly, and so then they're constantly being misunderstood until it becomes a necessity that they do communicate clearly, which it's tough. It's tough all around. Communication is so important.
Well, and here's the other part of that story. Oftentimes, the people in our lives that we are angry with or upset with may not even realize that we're angry or upset. We're giving away all of this time of our life in feelings of anger, pain, resentment, hurt, frustration, whatever it is you want to call it. We're giving all this time of our life away in these negative emotions, but the other person has no idea. And that's often the case, because like you said, communication is a difficult thing to do, and sometimes we don't know how to do that. Other times we can do it and it's still misunderstood. And that often feeds that continued sense of frustration. But, the value, and we talked also about this a little bit earlier, is how do we make ourselves open to receiving communication and learning to read between the lines? Because as you know from your example, sometimes when we make assumptions, or we're misled, or we draw conclusions that are incorrect, we aren't open to a new dynamic. We're not open to new information that may come that could create, as in your case, a paradigm shift where you go, oh, I didn't realize that. Oh my gosh. And all of a sudden, and this is what's so, I think, heartwarming about this story. Christmas Legacy is a short read, but I don't always think that it takes a really long book or a really long time to make an important point. And a lot of times, I think the value of the way Christmas Legacy is written is that there is enough in there to make it David's story, but there is enough left out that we can actually see ourselves probably very clearly in different aspects of this book and make it our story as well. Because these experiences or these feelings or whatever that David is having, we can relate to on both sides of the coin. And so I think that's one of the value of the book, and it's a short read for people who either struggle reading or who don't have a lot of time to read, or are just looking for just a good, like I said, a good heartwarming, endearing story. Christmas Legacy, I think, fits that bill very, very nicely. And as you read that and go on this journey with David, I think the ending, while it doesn't fix everything, leaves you with this wonderful idea of hope, which is another thing that we are always very focused on at Christmas time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, no, that's, it's just, I wonder how those books really impact everybody. The ones that are left out. For myself, they're like, it's a love-hate relationship, absolutely, with these. Like, because I like conclusions, I like endings of stories to be all wrapped up nice and pretty so that I can walk away from it and not have to think about it sometimes. But on the other hand, like, I love the self-growth that comes from being able to see myself in a situation, be able to see myself, oh man, that's how I've thought about this person or this circumstance for a long time. And there's another way that I could think about that would give me more power, more hope, or more belief in change, or more love for others. And so sometimes there's value in not completely ending a story or leaving it open enough that it can be yours and adopted. And I feel like it's almost like a newer form of writing. I don't know, maybe it's just I'm reading more, and so I'm just seeing it more. But it's a good form of writing. Like, I like the completely letting the reader place himself inside of the story and be there in the story, going through all the same experiences as the main character.
Additionally, we don't always, how it's, that forest for the trees thing. We don't always recognize this is who we are until all of a sudden it's presented to us and we go, oh, wow, is it me? Meaning, is this this could be me. Oh my gosh, this could be me. And suddenly you are able to see everything from a different perspective, as I meant, like a paradigm shift, like I said, to where suddenly we now have more insight and more information than we had before, and we can go, oh my gosh, I didn't even know, I didn't even realize. And then we can take a second look at ourselves and go, wow, where do I go from here?
Right. So I'm curious, this just came into my mind. Before we got on the podcast, you had said there's a difference, right, between a writer and an author. And I'm curious what the difference is between those two, because you are both.
Yes.
So I'm curious, what is the difference?
Well, some people know how to write, but have a hard time coming up with a good story. And some people have a really good story, but don't know how to write. So that's where you get the difference between a writer and an author. So if you have a really good idea, you can be the author of a very good idea and have no concept on how to write it. And so amazingly enough, ghostwriters write a strong, I wouldn't say majority, but there's a good portion of books out there that are written by ghostwriters, because some people have really, really good ideas and no writing talent at all. Other people have really great, writing talents, but have no creative ideas flowing or anything that comes. And so a lot of times those people become editors, and those are great. We need those too. But so that's a little bit of the difference between a writer and an author. They do identify them often as two separate things. So
okay, no, that's cool, because I was thinking, as you were describing a little bit earlier, as far as like seeing yourself in the book, I was thinking, what I really like in a book is, one, can I identify myself as part of this story? Do I have that aha moment that, wow, this could be me? But also, is there enough direction coming out of the book to give me a direction, right? Sometimes I've read some books. I read a lot of books. I try and read one a week, and there's just a lot of information. I slowed down for like a month and a half, because I was like, am I really getting anything out of this? Or am I just like reading, or listening rather,
right.
on Audible? I listen to a lot of books. I read one a month, but I listen to one a week. So there's a distinction there as well. Are you a listener or a reader?
There you go.
But same thing applies for me, at least. I've read some books where it's just like, well, this is a full and complete situation that I can identify with, that I see myself in, but there's no like solid direction. The writing is not giving the reader a direction to go with it, right? So it's like you wrote an awesome book, but you didn't think about, okay, one, who's going to read this book? Who's my audience? And two, how do I want them to act after they've read it? Like, what do I want them to be? How do I want their life to be transformed and be acting differently in the future? You just presented a really good case or a really good situation about something, but with no continuation to it, or even no invitation to a continuation of it. And so I'm curious, when people read this book, what were you hoping your audience will get out of this book? How do you want their life to be different after reading it than it was before?
Well, you bring up a really interesting point here, Sam, because as a writer, one of the difficult aspects of producing a book or a manuscript is you have to know, admittedly, you have to know your audience, but you also have to know, is my book a book that's intended to give a certain message? And then if it is, you have to be careful when you end the story, because if I'm going to give you direction, Sam, but I'm going to do it in a way that is contrary to something you're comfortable with, you're not going to have a positive feeling when you finish the book. You may go, well, it was a good story, but I could never do that, or that's not how I would handle that. And so there's an interesting dynamic here of, how do I make sure that I put enough in that, like you said, gives the person the guts of the story and a really good feeling about what is this about and what is this for and how do I fit into this, and and how does this apply to me, and how do I move forward afterwards to make a difference in my life or become a better person, or to create change, or whatever the goal is. But you also have to leave enough out of it so that that person can take a look at themselves and go, you know what, I'm not the type of person that would do this, but I am the type of person that would do this. And so moving forward, maybe I need to take a closer look at this so that I can make those changes or move in that direction in my own life. So that's a really, really hard, fine line for authors when they're writing a book like this, which is it's a fiction, but there's enough of that realistic and true to life, I don't know, guts, if that's what you want to call it, in the book, that we really can relate to this, and we really can say, hey, this could be me. I need to take a look at my life. I need to take a look at the man in the mirror and go, is it me? And how and do I want to change? Am I willing to do that? And if so, how will I do that? So I agree with what you're saying. You want to be able, as a writer of this type of a novel, to inspire someone or to enlighten someone to where they maybe take a look at where they are in their lives and make changes for the better. But you also don't want to put so much information in there or give them so much direction, especially in this type. In a self-help book, I would say yes. This has the dynamics of a self-help book without having all of those lists and that structure, right? And so you want people to be able to draw from the insight that's gained, but to be able to receive that information and then define for themselves, how do I make a change? So that's not completely explained, because everybody's situation is a little bit different, and everybody's motivation is a little bit different in how do they exercise that motivation. But hopefully there's enough here.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it's going to be great. I'm excited to read it and get my hands on it. I would say, so last question here. Is there anything, before I ask the last question, is there anything that you wanted to discuss or wanted to bring up that you feel like you haven't got to say yet, but it pertains to either Christmas and the season that we're in, or legacy, and how others can really produce their legacy, either in writing form or whatever, that they could pass on?
I will say that even though the book is called Christmas Legacy, it is a book that you could pick up any time of the year and read it, and probably get the benefits of what the intent of the book is. As far as the book, as far as even what you're suggesting here, my thoughts are, take a look at where you're at, take a look at where you are in your life, and ask yourself, am I living the legacy I want to pass on? And if you're not, maybe make a few changes. I mean, we got the new year coming up. We're close here. And I know we all make these New Year's resolutions and things like that. I think that that's important. A goal not written is only a wish, right? But I think it's important that we make them measurable. And even if we just choose one way this next year that we want to change our life so that we are incorporating and living and then passing on that legacy, we should be living the legacy we want to pass on. And if we're not, we might consider making that one of our resolutions this year.
Yeah, sure. And I think especially for myself anyways, that's a daily question that I ask myself, is what I did today or what I did yesterday, is that moving me closer to my legacy? Would my kids be proud of me? Would I be proud of me? Like, if I was a third party person looking in, did I do anything remarkable? Did I do anything noteworthy that somebody's actually going to want to talk about in 30 years from now? Or did I just kind of just coast through my life? For me, I really want to leave a massive legacy, something of love and gratitude and understanding and communication, faith. These are things that for me are very deep inside of myself that I think, from my psychology studies, I believe that finance is a huge underpinning thing for people to be able to get the help that they need in all the areas of their life and create the legacy that they want. Finance is important on one level or another, and being confident in your finance is important. So that's where I choose to kind of build my foundation and help people build financial foundations. But ultimately, it's to help people have better faith in their life, in whatever religion they're in. That's not as relevant to me as, are you applying the principles of faith on a daily basis? Are you daily creating the life that you want? Are you daily creating the legacy that you want to leave? And I believe that happens through faith. Faith is a principle of creation. And so I want to help people feel confident and comfortable that they can do that. And are they living in a state of gratitude? Are they living in love and compassion for those around them? Those are huge things for me that and I would say those are, when I go back and look at my childhood of what my parents taught me, even though there's a lot of things that didn't go well, I don't know of anybody more accepting and loving than my mom. And that's not to put anybody else down, but I know the people that my mom chose to have me associate with, and they were not generally the people that anybody else was looking at, caring about. They were the people that if you saw them on the street, you would look the other way and probably walk by them as not to have a conversation with them in a lot of cases. And that's who my mom's best friends are. And what's cool about that is these people, they're incredible humans. And because of my mom's example, I was able to get the opportunity to connect with these people that are generally overlooked. And I don't know of anybody else who does that really, except for my mom. So it's like those principles of love are things that are being passed down, and that I want to continue that legacy. Same with my dad and his enormous level of respect for women, on a level that I don't know very many other people who would sacrifice as much as they've sacrificed to respect women. And so it's those types of things that have become part of me and were, I believe, overarching in my childhood, even though the underpinning demonstration of things didn't always turn out the way that they probably even wanted. I think those are the messages that I got from my childhood that I want to create and continue down a legacy to my children and to my children's children. And so I think that's exactly right.
And I think what's neat, Sam, is it's not, some people have within themselves, as you've said, to create and have this large legacy. Others, it may be very, very small. And I don't think that it's the size, or if you want to look at it that way, of the legacy. It's the question is it the legacy you want to pass on? Mm-hmm. I think of my grandparents. They were very simple people. They didn't have a lot, but the two things that stand out the most to me about one set of my grandparents in particular is I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that they loved me. It didn't matter. I knew it. No matter what I did or what I didn't do, how good or how bad I was, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that they loved me. And this is the same grandparents who passed on this legacy of a handcrafted gift, because for me, I knew that it was very special and it was very specific and it was from the heart. And for some, that may not seem like that big, if you want to scale it that way, that big of a legacy, but I was very, very clear on who they were and how they made me feel. And the question is are we clear in what that legacy is that we want to pass on? And as you have suggested here, are we altering our lives in a way to create that so that we can pass that on?
Yeah, no, exactly. So that's perfect. I'm curious then, final question. This is final question. Maybe we'll have more final questions after this. No, this is really the final question. What do you want your legacy to be? If we're now talking about your great-grandchildren, you've passed on, as your grandparents have passed on, you're now talking, or your great-grandchildren are now talking to their friends about the legacy of Shae Burton. What do you want them to be saying?
Wow. I used to ask a question very similar to that when I was interviewing people to hire. And the question was, if you were to never, ever meet me again after today, what is the one thing about you that you would like me to know? And I think that I used to ask that, and I'll tell you what, it had nothing to do with what I was hiring them for, but their answers told me a lot about who they were. They really, really did. So, but I think for me, it's a hard question to narrow down into a simple answer, but for sure, my greatest legacy is that I want my children and my grandchildren to know, most importantly, how much I love them and how confident I am in their ability to make good choices in their lives and to create a life of value. I want them to know that my faith and my religion is a very strong and motivating force in my life. And I want them to know how much that I love their dad and grandpa. And what a meaningful life that you can create with someone very special. And for me, it's, if someone doesn't know that you love them, a lot of other things will never matter. And so I think that those things that I can do that are special and unique for them are what are going to stand out and what are going to stick in their minds, just like, those things that my grandfather and my grandmother passed on to me.
That's awesome. I'm going to say one thing and then we'll be done. But I love the statement that if people don't know that you love them, a lot of things will never matter. I think that goes, you can say it exactly opposite and it remains just as true. If people know that you love them, there's a lot of things that will never matter. All of the bad things, those will be forgotten because the overarching is an enormous amount of love. So don't worry if you're not showing up perfectly right now. Don't worry if your legacy is not perfect right now and you're not living it. Don't get down on yourself.
I agree.
If the overarching message is love, I just don't even remember a lot of the bad things in my childhood. Like I know they happened, but it's like that didn't happen to me because I've changed, and that's not my parents who did that to me because they've changed, right? So it's like that just
it's a journey.
It is a journey, and it's okay. And some people are in the middle of it, in the thick of it, and they think this is what life is going to be like for the next 30 years. It doesn't have to be. And if love is there, then a lot of things are not going to matter. And no, don't stress out about them. Don't beat yourself up about them because that's not what you want your legacy to be. You want your legacy to be love.
And it's never too late to start that legacy.
Amen. Perfect. I'm so excited and so grateful that you were able to come on. I know it's short notice and trying to get in before Christmas, before we all get super busy. I am curious though, if people did want to connect with you or at least get your book, where do they get your book and how do they connect with you if you're open to that?
You can go to my website at shaeburtonbooks.com. It's spelled SHAE. And then the book itself, you can either click on links there and it will take you, or you can go directly to Barnes & Noble, Amazon.com, or it's also available on iTunes. So, yeah.
That's good. Are you going to put it on Audible and read it?
You might be able to request it. My understanding is with the publisher, you could go to any major book source and you should be able to find it, but I'm not sure if it's on Audible or not. That's a good question. I will find out.
It's not. That's how I consume information, and it's how a lot of people I know consume information.
Yep.
And I think your message is important enough that you allow them to consume it that way. So
it's in a lot of ebook sources, so it may very well be available on Audible.
Okay, that's good. Good to know. Fantastic, and thank you so much. And we will, if you guys who are listening, if you guys do comment, share, or like this on social media, take a screenshot and tag myself in it, and I will give you a shout out on the next Fueling Your Legacy episode. So have a wonderful day. Thank you again, Shae.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks for joining us today. If what you heard resonated with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me so I can give you a shout out on the next episode. And thanks to all those who have left a review. It helps spread the message of what it really takes to build a legacy that lasts. Catch you next time on Fueling Your Legacy.